A dog's love letter to his squeaky avocado.
Dearest squeaky avocado, my heart yearns to chew thee. Alas, I've devoured a small action figure and have taken ill, unable to partake in our jubilant squeakings. Worry not, as I am on the mend, and Lemonade Pet Insurance covered 90% of the veterinarian's cost. I recommend all the cats and dogs of the land get a quote at lemonade.com/pet. Soon, my tummy will be unburdened, and we shall frolic once more. Yours, Jerry.
Hello, I'm Colby Fedor, and for this episode of Report to Wyoming, you'll be hearing from Casper city leaders that are taking the next step towards revitalizing several parts of the community after a new study identified 7 areas that meet Wyoming's legal definition of blight. Under Wyoming law, blight refers to conditions that hinder a community's growth or pose risks to public health and safety. Those conditions can include deteriorating buildings, unsafe infrastructure, environmental hazards, poor street layouts, high vacancy rates, or other factors that make an area economically or socially distressed. With that definition in mind, a new study presented to the council identified 7 areas across the city of Casper that qualify as blighted under state statute. The designation allows the city to consider forming an urban renewal authority, which could open the door to new funding tools and redevelopment projects aimed at revitalizing aging neighborhoods and commercial corridors. First, you'll be hearing from Liz Becher. She's a senior city official in Casper who oversees development, housing planning, and redevelopment efforts across the community. Her department manages planning, building inspections, housing programs, code enforcement, and urban renewal projects.
This evening, we are pleased to present the Blight study that we've been working on for the last several months. Council gave permission in December to move forward with this Blight study, and we selected a consultant. But I do want to introduce some of the attendees tonight who have all been instrumental in truly this Casper Blight study. As the city attorney said, we do have 3 members of our planning commission here this evening: Joe Hutchison, Dan Elston, and Laura Hunter. We're also pleased to have members of the Old Yellowstone District Advisory Committee: Lindsay Grant, Martin Axland, and also Martin, as well as William Wynn, are downtown development investors with Brick and Bond, and partners, I should say. And then our DDA Executive Director, Melissa Huguet, is here also on behalf of the DDA. And I had hoped Justin Farley would be able to join us, so he may be also zooming in on this. As you all remember, Advanced Casper did pay for this study, $20,000, but then the DDA also was part $3,000 of that $20,000. So we've got some wonderful funding partners that made this study possible. As the city attorney said, we want to just do an overview this evening of the Blight study, be able to see if council has questions, but the direction requested that we're seeking this evening is to see if you all are satisfied with moving this forward to the official planning commission meeting on April 9th, in which the 7-body board will in fact vote to see that it is in conformance with the comprehensive land use plan, following a written statement that is required by statute on how it complies with the comprehensive plan. So we've been following right along with what the statutory requirements are. After that vote, we will be back in front of this body, likely at the April 21st meeting. And as I stated in the council meeting, the council memo, we are looking at doing an initiative resolution that our consultant will step through a little bit more this evening is some of the next steps. And again, getting this set up appropriately, and again, seeking direction this evening to see if you all are satisfied with the Blight study to date. And then to Councilor Sweeney's question, staff is asking for a couple of council members to work with staff. Whether that decision is made tonight or done as a follow-up, we would like to have a subcommittee that we can begin to step through, again, also with our consultant, but similar to the Economic Development Joint Powers Board, looking at the ability to set up an urban renewal agency, urban renewal board. In the past, we did have an urban renewal agency, 5-member board, but we do want council's direction, which is again a option for the state statutes, is to get council involved with the agency or the board, or the board. So again, a couple of items tonight, but if Vice Mayor, that we don't have the 2 volunteers this evening, we can follow up certainly before that April 21st meeting. So again, we looked at doing 7 areas within the city. I think you all are familiar with those 7. Again, urban renewal areas open up opportunities for increased sales tax, property tax, building permit revenue. But more importantly, they also allow us to look at different revenue streams, such as industrial revenue bonds, perhaps again, federal grants, which is how we did the old Yellowstone district for many, many years. And then also looking at such tools as tax increment financing and beginning to explore that option. So the consultant that we have had the pleasure of working with for the last several months is in fact Mark Christensen. He is a certified planner with the American Institute of Certified Planners. He is with AVI Consulting out of Cheyenne. And again, he did come up today to do a presentation a little bit different. You all received the Blight study, so he'll be stepping through parts of that this evening, kind of doing some explanation and what the next steps are for the city of Casper as it relates to urban renewal areas. So, Mark.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. Alrighty, as Liz said, my name is Mark Christensen. I'm with AVI in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And instead of going through the entire 80-plus page document, I condensed it a little bit for you guys. So agenda tonight, we have a quick introduction. We'll talk about some of our applicable statutes. We will talk about blight. Blight is one of those terms that is used in the state statutes that unfortunately we do have to use to unlock some of these tools. So we just want to be clear with that terminology that it is required by state statutes. It's not recorded against the property or anything like that, but it really does unlock some of these tools that we have through the urban renewal agencies and authority. We'll talk a little bit about the study areas, and then just a quick overview of what those next steps would be for you. Just a little bit about me to give myself a little bit of credibility to talk about urban renewal and blight. So I worked for the city of Cheyenne from November of 2019 to July of 2022. Prior to that, I might add that I was an intern at the city of Laramie. While city manager Jordan was there, I worked under Derek Taney and his planning department there. So interned while I was in college, but worked for the city of Cheyenne, did the preliminary blight study in URA establishment, worked on the Hitching Post Plan and Project, the Hines and Hole Plan and Project, and then the 15th Street Plan and Project. Some of those have started to see some of these projects with the tax increment financing come to fruition, or at least start to. I worked with Ayers Associates for a little bit. Again, working with the city of Laramie on their initial blight study and their URA establishment, and then working on their URA training. After Ayers, jumped over to AVI as a partner and senior planner. I've been there since January of 2024. So done a little bit more on the development side of the tax increment financing. So worked with the West End Flats project and the Air project on these TIF agreements, and then also helped the city of Laramie with their North 4th Street Plan and Project area. With that being said, so really to unlock the tools that are found within the urban renewal agencies, we are required to do this initiative resolution. So no municipality can exercise the authority conferred in the urban renewal code until the local governing body on its own motion or by virtue of a petition of 25 or more electorals has adopted a resolution finding that there's one or more slum or blighted area that exists within the community, and the rehabilitation, conservation, redevelopment, or combination of that is in the best interests of the community. So with that being said, it lends the question of what is blight? This is a very long definition of blight, and I would like to note that the Wyoming Urban Renewal Code is a pretty old statute, drafted in the 1960s. So some of this language I would say is pretty antiquated. Urban renewal kind of comes from a time when there was a lot of redevelopment, a lot of removal of buildings and those sorts of things. And I would say at that time too, it was sort of anticipated that the urban renewal would remove slum and blight residential areas. That's typically not how we see it used now. It's more for redevelopment of some commercial areas, but the terminology is still there. So that is something that can give the community pause, but we want to be upfront about that component of it. So with that, the condition of blight, with that long definition, you'll see there's kind of a long list of things such as a substantial number of slums, dilapidation, deteriorated or deteriorating buildings, existence of conditions that endanger life, items that inhibit housing production, economic or social liabilities, unsanitary or unsafe conditions, and those sorts of things. So from that long list of what is included in that definition, the way that we go about a blight study is we create this list, a checklist of sorts, and we go through this checklist and see if these conditions exist on site. It's important to note in Wyoming, the legislature did visit this a little bit a couple of years ago. They wanted to see if there's potentially 4 conditions of blight that, as a minimum, to make an area designated as blight, but that didn't go through. So a place like Colorado would have, you need to have a certain 7 of the 13 conditions of blight, whereas Wyoming doesn't have that. Throughout the study, you'll notice these little text boxes that just kind of exemplify some of the statutes and explain some of the things that are found within the study. So example here, we have text box 2.1, that the blight designation does not devalue the property, as we said previously. Blight or slum designations do not attach to individual properties and they do not reduce property values. This designation simply allows properties within the area to access urban renewal tools. Potentially, if a property is within an urban renewal area, to the development community, it might signify that this is a big opportunity. That's something that happened in Cheyenne with the development down there. A developer saw that the property was in an urban renewal, so it somewhat increased the value because they saw the development opportunity and the opportunity to use tax increment financing. Second, tax increment financing is not automatic. This blight study does not create tax increment financing districts in and of itself. It's rather identifying areas where these projects could take place. In order for tax increment financing to exist, a plan and project for that specific area would need to be adopted. Text box 2.3 is that we have that blight does not need to exist in every project area. There's this condition that once an area is declared slum or blight, the urban renewal plan may be considered. However, blight does not need to be present with every plan and project area, as the improvements help to prevent the spread of slum and blight. The way that we've crafted this is that we've said that blight generally exists within Casper, so the community can anticipate projects in all these different areas. However, we will fine-tune this with the city attorney's office because we do know some other communities, such as Laramie, are dealing with this condition right now where they've said blight generally exists in the community. However, there's some members of the community that are saying we need the blight designation, prior to the project commencing. So we'll fine-tune that for you before we finalize this. And then lastly, that there is only one condition of blight is required. So the blight areas we've identified are these 7 areas. We worked with staff to identify these areas. And as you can see, we don't have those hard geographic areas. Rather, we have those pretty broad areas. These icons here are actually the different photos that I've taken documenting the blight in the community. What will be nice about this project is once we turn it over to the city, this will be a catalog of all the conditions of blight. So each of these photos is geolocated, and then we'll also signify the condition of blight that is identified on that specific photo. With that being said, we do want to note that the blight study is it's a sort of a windshield survey type exercise where it's a visual exercise, very high level environmental, if there is some environmental information on the site, and then also high level site investigation regarding ownership, taxes, those sorts of things on the county assessors. It's not necessarily a deep dive on all the individual properties, rather just that high level, we believe blight exists at this area. So because you do have the study in front of you, just wanted to quickly run through the condition surveys. So with downtown Casper, again, we have that there's dilapidation, deteriorating structures, conditions of life, or existence of conditions which endanger life or property by fire or other causes. One of those that we commonly see is vacancies. We think that is a condition that if a building is vacant, if a fire occurs, those sorts of things, it's a lot less likely to be responded to and those sorts of things. Also, included in that would be the age of buildings, which is also with the environmental component as well, the environmental impairments. The age of buildings, likely conditions of lead-based paint, asbestos, those sorts of things help fulfill these requirements. So with that, we have that downtown Casper exhibited 7 of the 13 conditions of blight. We surveyed North Casper as well. We found that this had 9 conditions of the 13 conditions of blight. Again, this will be at the disposal of council to look through the photos. They are all geotagged. And, if through this study we want some more information on some of these areas, we'd be happy to go out and supplement those. The CY Avenue corridor, we have 6 conditions of blight. The East Ridge Mall, we have 5 conditions of blight. One of the things that I would like to highlight about this is we've found this condition a lot in various other communities in Wyoming where there's just generally poor connectivity. Some of these large parcels, such as a mall, they were originally planned for this big central building. And because of that, there's not necessarily utilities that you could create a street grid through, connections that you could plow through, and those sorts of things. And I would say commonly in other states such as Colorado, mall redevelopments are a primary project that are considered with urban renewal projects.
Can we ask questions going through?
Mark, you all right there?
I'm happy for that. Yeah, that's great.
Councilor Sweeney?
Thank you. Could we go back to North Casper just for a second? So picture number 3, I think I'm familiar with that. I don't own that, but I am just interested what you saw there that was blight. Because the house looks in relatively decent condition. Was it the sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. And then on the East Ridge Mall, because that one kind of was concerning to me that would be considered blight. But was that mostly because of what you just mentioned on connectivity and that type of thing? Because, originally that's where Red Lobster was, and then the Wine Rack and other outbuildings. So that's the main concern there is connectivity.
Yes, Vice Mayor, through you. That is correct. With that being said, if this large parcel were to redevelop in the future, I think there would be a desire for replatting, subdivision process, public improvements, and some of those things might cut through what the existing building would be. So it's still a good piece of a good opportunity for the community. It's really just allowing it to be eligible for tax increment financing with improvements to a new street grid, curb gutters, sidewalks, sewer mains, those sorts of things. This exercise would make it eligible for those sorts of things.
Thank you.
To go on, the next area we had was the Paradise Valley corridor. We saw 7 conditions of blight exhibited in that area. And then the event center, again, that is kind of what we were speaking to with the mall, where there are these large parcels with just general accessibility difficulties, those sorts of things. And we do have that. There were 4 conditions of blight here, and they are, one of those is also just the lack of pedestrian amenities and bicycle amenities and those sorts of things too. So the blight designation is really, again, to make it eligible for future urban renewal potential, and to address some of those things. So say there was an urban renewal project in the event center area, it could be, if there's a project that could generate substantial tax increment revenue, which we'll talk about in a little bit here, it could be used to enhance pedestrian bicycle facilities in the area to remedy that condition of blight.
Do you mind? I think our city manager has a comment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, you said event center area. What were the boundary delineations of the area?
So we were pretty broad with this one. Liz, do you remember exactly where we were?
You can drill in on the map.
Yeah. We were generally, there we go, right around, oh, sorry.
Ford, Wyoming Center.
Yeah, the Ford, Wyoming Center. And then, but we did go up to Amico Road. Sorry, that was what was, I was trying to spit up. Sorry about that.
That's exactly what I wondered, if it went to Amico.
It did.
So,
It did
thank
go
you.
to Amico Road.
And that was to correspond with our NPO studies that have underway.
Okay, thank you.
So moving on, we also have the Platte River Commons. We had 4 conditions of blight there, and that was just generally the area for Platte River Commons. If there's projects in the future that want to mitigate floodplain concerns, those sorts of things. The existence of the floodplain is one of those that endangers property or life by fire or other causes. So that's the floodplain there. And if there were projects in the future that wanted to mitigate these floodplain concerns, that would be appropriate for this location. So again, with the blight determination, what a blight study does do, what it does not, it allows the community to use the powers in the Wyoming Urban Renewal Code, including TIF. It qualifies the community to establish an urban renewal agency. It permits properties to be included in a URA plan and project for redevelopment and address the items that have been considered blight. And then it also allows the community to seek additional funding sources. These sorts of studies help bolster grant opportunities, other funding opportunities, and things like that. What it does not do, it does not decrease property values. It is not recorded against the property. And then lastly, it does not change a property's zoning or permissible uses. So going from this URA setup into these individual projects, this blight study is that kind of first part.
Before you move forward, if I could.
Councilor Sweeney.
So on a couple of things. So this gives the city no power to go in and condemn anything.
The power of condemnation is in the Wyoming Urban Renewal Code. So it is within the Urban Renewal Code. But we haven't seen that used, but it is in the Wyoming Urban Renewal Code.
Okay. And then when you talked about the Platte River Commons, and that's in the Amico reuse plan. So were you contemplating, and did you look at the different requirements considered to develop on that property as far as a 99-year lease, those type of in different building restrictions? And
so we have not included that, but I'd be happy to look into that for the final version.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the blight study, the initiative resolution, that will be the first thing on the docket for the city council. That will be what is anticipated to move forward next month. But we wanted to at least provide a primer of what can be anticipated after that as well. So the city does have the ability, the city council could exercise the Wyoming Urban Renewal Code on its own accord. However, they also outline the ability for the municipality to delegate their urban renewal powers to an urban renewal agency. And with that being said, they do have the ability to delegate all the powers in the Urban Renewal Code except for these 4, which is a blight or slum determination, the approval of urban renewal plans and modifications. The URA board in that situation makes a recommendation to council on urban renewal plans and projects. General plans or community-wide plans, the establishment of a general plan for the locality as a whole, and then the power to formulate a workable program, which is outlined in state statutes. And then this one highlighted that a municipality shall not delegate to urban renewal agency or board the power to acquire by condemnation real property within the boundaries of an urban renewal area. So to the previous question, the city does have that power through the Urban Renewal Code, but the Urban Renewal Agency would not.
so, if I could, so does that mean, so let's say we set up an agency, I'll wait until we hear recommendations, but then anything they do, they have to come back to the city council. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's
before
correct.
They move forward with anything?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, so are we looking at phase 1 right now? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So just members of the Urban Renewal Board. It is outlined in state statutes that it's a 5-member board, and these have revolving term limits. But it is outlined that it's a 5-person board. Just wanted to highlight that point.
So I don't get confused here. So my terminology on agency means we're growing government and hiring more staff. Is that the intent, or am I understanding that incorrectly? Would it be more like planning and zoning?
Communities that it has operated in Wyoming thus far, it's operated more like planning and zoning. However, statutes do outline it to be maybe more in line with like a DDA, okay. Where they could have staff. However, we haven't seen that in any communities in Wyoming thus far.
Thank you. That helps.
So an urban renewal plan, just highlighting what would come forward. So if any of these blight areas want to move forward with a project, they would be required to have an urban renewal plan that would conform to the general plan for the municipality as a whole, and then be sufficient to complete to indicate land acquisition, demolition, and removal of structures, what the redevelopment could potentially be, what any improvements would be, if there are required planning and zoning changes, and then any density or other building requirements as well. Here's just an example. So when a plan comes forward, that is when the actual project area is delineated. And this is important because this would be what would set the increment. This is in Laramie, this is Levante Park, and this is for their North 4th Street redevelopment plan. These are the parcels that are included and that would be frozen for the tax increment. So big picture thinking, if we do have the entire downtown area exhibiting conditions of blight. However, 2 parcels wanted to do a redevelopment plan and utilize tax increment financing. The plan and project would be specific to those 2 parcels or potentially the immediate parcels surrounding it. Applicable statutes, here's tax increment financing. 15-9-120 is the mechanism that allows it. It's a lot of words to explain this nice graph. Essentially, when a plan and project is adopted, and if the plan and project allows for tax increment financing, the existing base of that property is, for lack of a better term, frozen. So say we have a property that is currently paying $5,200 in taxes at this moment, and a redevelopment project comes through. That $5,200 would create these incremental taxes that could be reinvested into public improvements on the site. I would say this is the primary driver for urban renewal in Wyoming at this time. The cities of Cheyenne has been working on it. Douglas actually approved one this week as well. And then Laramie is still exploring it too. Lastly, since this is a joint session, just wanted to highlight Planning Commission's role. So prior to approving an urban renewal project, the local governing body shall submit the urban renewal plan to the Planning Commission of the municipality, if any, for review and recommendations to its conformity with the general plan for the development of the entire municipality. We're planning on submitting the Blight study and explaining how it meets the the comprehensive plan and future land use plan for the city of Casper, just so Planning Commission knows that plans and projects might be located within these blight study areas. So next steps, this is my final slide here, but we have the blight study adoption resolution by city council potentially next month. The urban renewal agency, the other communities we've worked in, there's been an ordinance by council, similar to what an ordinance for the establishment of planning commission might look like, but it's codified in city code to say how the agency reviews items and the membership of the agency, those sorts of things. There would be urban renewal agency member selection. And then after that, the city could bring forward their own urban renewal plans, but there's also provisions in state statutes that allow just the general development community to bring these forward as well. And with that, I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the presentation. Councilor Sweeney?
So opportunity zones, can they work in concert? I don't know. I haven't looked in that in a while, but it seems like President Trump has reinvigorated opportunity zones. Can they work in concert with a TIF?
So through you, I believe they could. I'm not as familiar with opportunity zones, but because